If everybody can take their seats, we'll start in a minute. We good? Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Esther Fendrick, and I am the Director of Community Engagement and Jewish Life at the Jewish Community Center of Middlesex County. On behalf of the JCC, the Metuchen-Edison Area Interfaith Clergy Association, the Jewish Federation in the Heart of New Jersey, and the Jewish Foundation for the Righteous, I thank you for joining us for our annual Yom HaShoah Holocaust Remembrance Program. Tonight, we join together as a community to solemnly remember and honor the memory of the 6 million Jews and the millions of other individuals who were murdered by the Nazis during the Holocaust. Tonight, we join together as a community to honor those who survived the Holocaust against all odds. And tonight, we join together as a community to recognize the fundamental dignity and equality of every human being and to acknowledge and accept our responsibility and duty as members of our community and as individuals to tikkun olam, to repairing our world from generation to generation and to creating a community that is more accepting, secure, and free. At this time, I invite the Reverend Chuck Koblenz of the New Dover United Methodist Church in Edison and the president of the Metuchen-Edison Area Interfaith Clergy Association to the podium.
Thank you, Esther, and welcome everyone. I wanted to just share with you a text that the Metuchen-Edison area, it's a long name, that Mika got about a couple of years ago, and this is the text. It's an email. I wanted to share with all of you some decisions that the JCC just made. Out of an abundance of caution to heed the recommendations of the health experts to ensure the health and safety of our members, the JCC will be closed to all members for all programs and services as of the end of today, Monday, March 16th, 2020. And this was to announce that we were not going to be able to meet live for this event. But here's the punchline. It is our present intention to reopen the facility on Monday, April 6th, 2020. Signed, Esther. We were all doing the same exact thing at our various houses of worship. It is really an honor to be here tonight. The Metuchen-Edison Area Interfaith Clergy Association has been around for a long, long time. And we are a group that flies into the face of so many who seek to divide us according to our beliefs, according to our languages, our colors, our cultures. We are a group who listen to one another, who learn from one another, who share with one another from all of our religious traditions. We don't look across the table at someone and say, well, they're not like us, so they must be wrong. We look across the table and say, what can we learn? What can we share with one another? So we nurture one another. We also are heavily involved, as you know, in many programs of outreach and justice. You know about our annual Hunger Walk, our Thanksgiving service, our Martin Luther King service, Yom HaShoah, other things that we've done. We support one another in our own houses of worship, ministries, and outreach things. We've done things like Wheels to Worship, the racial justice panel that First Presbyterian in Metuchen put together, and Mika took part in that. We got together and got Ibram Kendi here to talk about anti-racism on a Zoom call with all of our houses of worship. They joined with New Dover United Methodist Church, my church, and many of our congregations contributed $38,000. We purchased an intensive care unit in Christian Medical College in India that is literally saved. hundreds of lives. And so there are so many things that we've done recently. We've had a prayer vigil for peace in Ukraine. That, if you were able to make it to that, you saw where there were two people, one first-generation Ukrainians, one who was a recent immigrant, who came there just to tell us thank you, and that they were relaying word back to their families in Ukraine that there are people in the Metuchen Edison area who genuinely care about them. We know that many of our congregations raised significant amounts of funds and needed items to send to Ukraine, and will continue to do so. But these are the kind of things that we do. I think one of the most important things that Mika does is we are a living symbol of mutual love and respect in the community. We take this task, this vocation very seriously. And it is always an honor to be here and to be a part of this incredible program. Esther deserves so much thanks for putting this together year to year. And over the last couple of years, it has been, it's been interesting. It has been. But I just want to welcome all of you. It's going to be an incredible program. And at this time, I would like to introduce Adam Glenn, who is the CEO of the Jewish Community Center of Middlesex County. Please welcome him.
Thank you. On behalf of the Jewish Community Center of Middlesex County, I'm going to take this. Thank you. I have to get permission from Esther. She's now our Chief Medical Officer as well. On behalf of the Jewish Community Center of Middlesex County, I am honored to welcome all of you this evening for the annual Yom HaShoah Remembrance Program, the theme of which tonight acknowledges those rescuers of Jews and others persecuted during the Shoah. We are particularly privileged and honored to welcome Alan and Stephanie Bonder, who will share the remarkable story of their father's experience. And I just had my own remarkable experience when Stephanie made me realize that we actually kind of grew up together in USY and haven't seen each other in about 35 years. So it is a personal welcome as well. First, a hearty thank you to our own Esther Fendrick, the JCC Director of Community Engagement and Jewish Life, along with the Metuchen Edison Area Interfaith Clergy Association, for their diligent work, vision, commitment to the program and to the message and meaning of this program. Thank you to the staff of the JCC, my colleagues and friends, for their assistance and their continued focus on our mission. Special thanks to the members of the Edison Township Police Department, not only for their presence here tonight, but for their selfless work every single day, keeping us and our community safe. Thank you. I would like to thank for their partnership the Jewish Federation in the heart of New Jersey, represented tonight by Laura Safran, Director of Community Impact, Carol Kaminsky, member of the Federation Governor's Council, and Dan Rosette, the Manager of Community and Israel Engagement. And of course, I thank for her continuing leadership and support the President of the JCC Board of Directors, Barbara Mulgeier. And thank you to the Jewish Foundation for the Righteous for their support of this important program. We certainly look forward to continued work together with the foundation. To our friends in the clergy who spiritually guide this vibrant, vital, and diverse community, thank you for your leadership, for setting an example, and for advocating for mutual respect, understanding, and goodwill. To all of you who have come tonight and joined us, I welcome you, and I thank you for showing your concern and support, your respect, and your commitment. You know, we're taught as young Jewish children never to forget the Shoah. We are taught to exercise a commitment to others and to work for the greater good and for the cause of peace. We are taught tikkun olam, repair of the world. By your presence here tonight at this place, you are confirming your commitment and that of this community to never forget the Shoah and to never stop in the pursuit of peace, harmony, and understanding. At this rather chaotic time, when we are living through renewed hatred, anti-Semitism, bigotry, I believe that this commemoration at this venue at this time, the Jewish Community Center, a part of the community campus, the collaboration of organizations of different faiths but similar values, this represents a model for maintaining our core mission, our commitment and continued efforts to find common ground. Hello? That's better. Good evening and welcome to the JCC of Middlesex County. I can usually riff, but as I was saying, thank you, Bishop. At this time, when we are living through renewed hatred, through bigotry, through a precipitous rise in anti-Semitism, this moment, being together at this place, as I said, a place of organizations collaborating that have different faiths but similar values. This sends a message that we are committed to finding common ground and continuing our efforts to remember the underlying principle, that being never to forget our people lost at the hand of hatred. While some quote great leaders and scholars, I hope you will indulge me as I quote James Taylor from his song, Shed a Little Light. There are ties between us, all men and women living on the earth, ties of hope and love, sister and brotherhood, that we are bound together in our desire to see the world become a place in which our children can grow free and strong. We are bound together by the task that stands before us and the road that lies ahead. We are bound. We are bound. I thank you for joining us this evening and for the message that we all bring by being here together. Never to forget and never again to allow without response the destruction of a people. Shalom uvracha, peace and blessing. And it is now my distinct pleasure and privilege to introduce a friend of the JCC, of the community campus, and the leader of this community, the mayor of the Township of Edison, the Honorable Sameep Joshi.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Adam. You know, it's truly an honor to be here right now as your mayor. This is my first year as I serve. And one of the things that is of the highest priority is ensuring that our community understands that we are all united. And it is incredibly important to recognize that the diversity here in Edison Township is what really makes us so special. Not just Edison, but I know Metuchen and Greater Middlesex County. We were ranked one of the most diverse communities in the United States. Middlesex County happened to be top 10. And amongst that, I always say this, where I feel so strongly that a lot of the things that you see happening across the world where perhaps there is division, there is distrust, mistrust. Those are the problems that I firmly and wholeheartedly believe that we can address on a local level here in Edison and Metuchen as well. And what I mean by that is by really going out of our way to understand one another, making sure that we understand each other's histories, each other's values, each other's beliefs. Because as the children of our community are raised into this society, they are taught to do exactly that, to understand one another. And it starts also with our history. I was born and raised in Edison Township, and I thoroughly consider myself 100% American. But I take pride in that. I take pride in understanding that although my heritage comes from another land, another country, I consider myself no different from each and every single one of you. And that we have to be cognizant of understanding and recognizing one another. That's the way that we understand each other's history. What happened decades ago with the Holocaust was absolutely horrible. What happened in other communities where there are also genocide, there's also genocide, is equally terrible and horrible. But we have to go out of our way to rise above hate. And it warms my heart as mayor to see so many signs where love trumps hate. See so many signs where we recognize that wherever there is hatred, we have to dismiss it. We have to look past it. We have to recognize where it is, and we have to move on from it. We cannot allow it in this community. Because the way that we act as one community here in Edison, those vibrations will be felt throughout greater America. If we, as the most diverse community, one of the most diverse communities in the United States, can't solve these kind of problems, then it's never going to happen anywhere. But I do believe understanding the history behind both the civil rights movement, the history of Edison Township, knowing the vast communities that there are in Edison, we've seen so many communities live in harmony. And that is what warms my heart. We have to be mindful and cognizant, as I said, of our history. We have to be mindful and teach our children as well what happened in the Holocaust and why it's incredibly important. I want to share a quick story of a mistake that I learned from. I won't speak about it too often, but you may be able to look it up. You can certainly look it up through Google searches. During the pandemic, there was an incident where Lakewood Township was being criticized for a variety of reasons. And I made a huge blunder, huge error, not criticizing Lakewood at all. It was simply a silly mistake of even mentioning Lakewood. And it was with another reference. But what I learned from that moment was, and I had individuals from representatives from the Simon Wiesenthal Center reach out to me and explain to me why I shouldn't even have done that. And that was a huge moment of realization for me, where I realized that words do matter. And there are individuals who manipulate certain words, such as my tweet at the time, and they will use that to further their hatred agenda, their hateful agenda. And that's why we have to be so cognizant, so aware, so mindful of how things can be manipulated. And we have to protect our communities. I'm the first to tell this story, and I have no problem saying it because I recognize my mistake. I went down to Lakewood. I met a lot of people there who I'm very close friends with right now. And I'm also considered a huge ally to the Simon Wiesenthal Center now. I'm also being recognized by them this summer as one of their biggest allies in the country. But that was a learning lesson for me. And I think it's important that we make sure that we are very mindful of our words, very mindful of our history, very mindful of our culture, understanding one another, and that's the only way that we can step up and have each other's backs as we do in Edison Township. I'm happy to serve as your mayor. I'm proud to serve as your mayor, and I will do everything I can to ensure that communities everywhere feel that they are protected and are fully a part of our community. Thank you again for having me here.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm not the mayor. My name is Carol Kaminsky. Oh, down a little. Is that better? Whoa. My name is Carol Kaminsky. I'm a member of the governor's, lower. Okay, how's that? A member of the Governor's Council and Finance Committee at the Jewish Federation in the heart of New Jersey. Thank you to the Metuchen Edison Area Interfaith Clergy Association and the Jewish Community Center of Middlesex County for bringing us all together. I am very proud to be here tonight. Tonight, we honor the righteous among the nations, non-Jews who took great risks to save Jews during the Holocaust. Rescue took many forms, and the righteous came from different nations, religions, and walks of life. What they shared was their belief in the sanctity of life and their willingness to protect their Jewish neighbors when hostility and indifference prevailed. There is no better time for this message. In an ultra-polarized world where people wonder if they can be friends with someone who holds different views than them, where divisiveness is intentionally sowed by some of the social media that we use, we need this reminder. Humans have the capacity for kindness, goodness, and courage. But how do we inspire in one another the motivation to make never again the reality the world longs for? We can take moments to remember those who were lost. We can be witness to carry on the stories that we have heard to others. We can ensure that students today have information to reflect on the lessons of the Holocaust and provide opportunities for them to hear stories from survivors, resistors, rescuers, and their families. We can build bridges with like-minded partners. Jewish Federation remains committed to all of this by connecting students with survivors, resistors, rescuers, and their families, by building collaborative partnerships with the NAACP and other ethnic and religious groups, by holding series of interfaith conversations, training lay leaders to build and maintain alliances as a means to fight anti-Semitism and all forms of hatred. It is our goal not only to remember our past and our heritage, but to also understand and incorporate their lessons and meanings for the future of our community. Tonight, we are privileged to honor survivors and their rescuers. Thank you.
And I'm Eric Rosen. I'm the rabbi at Neve Shalom here in Metuchen. And I understand the 7 of you a long time ago was our youth advisor too, so welcome back again into the community. We have said many times that we're here to commemorate the Shoah. This is Yom HaShoah, the day in which we commemorate the horrors of the Holocaust. But if you look on a calendar in Israel, it doesn't just say Yom HaShoah, it says Yom HaShoah v'Hagevura. It's a day in which we commemorate not only the horrors of the Holocaust, but also the heroism and the bravery that was demonstrated during that period of time. Tonight, the stories that the Bonders have come to share with us, with the movie that we'll see and with their words, is about the bravery of people who are not Jewish. If you go to Yad Vashem, which is a museum and a sacred space in Jerusalem which is dedicated to preserving these memories. There's a grove there, a group of trees that is dedicated to the righteous from among the nations. What we acknowledge is that Gevurah, that heroism, is something that did not just happen amongst the Jewish community. We acknowledge that there were those who took the ultimate risk to protect Jews and other persecuted minorities, people who were brave enough and principled enough to put their own lives and the lives of their families at risk. Today we celebrate those heroes, those people who had every incentive to look the other way, but instead turned towards our people and others who are suffering so terribly. Today we give thanks for their bravery, and we pledge during this terrifying moment in which we find ourselves to honor their courage by making the commitment also not to look away from those who are suffering and those who are at risk. I thank all of you for coming, and I thank you for sharing your family's story with us.
In 1986, Rabbi Harold M. Schulweis established the Jewish Foundation for the Righteous to fulfill the traditional Jewish commitment to Hakarat HaTov, the searching out and recognition of goodness. To this end, the Jewish Foundation for the Righteous fulfills what Rabbi Schulweis felt was a duty to assist those righteous Gentiles who are in need. These individuals are often reluctant to ask for help, even though they acted without expecting reward then or now. The foundation began by supporting 8 rescuers in the late 1980s. In 2021, the foundation distributed approximately $900,000 in direct support of righteous Gentiles. The number of rescuers receiving monthly financial support from the foundation grew over the years to a high of 1,850 in 2003. Currently, the foundation supports aged and needy rescuers in 18 countries. Depending upon availability of funds, the foundation also provides one-time grants for the purchase of food during the Christmas holiday season to rescuers living in Poland and other Eastern European countries. The foundation remains committed to supporting these rescuers throughout the remainder of their lives. Over the past 29 years, the foundation has awarded more than $42 million to these aging heroes. In addition to providing needed financial assistance to rescuers each month, the foundation preserves the memory and legacy of the rescuers through its National Holocaust Education Program. Each year, although they have not done so during COVID, the Jewish Foundation for the Righteous reunites a rescuer with the survivor he or she saved and honors the rescuer and the survivor at an annual dinner. Often, the rescuer and survivor have not seen each other for decades, sometimes not since the end of the war. In the months leading up to the reunion, the foundation visits with the rescuer and the survivor and produces a short documentary for the dinner that tells their special story. It is my honor to share one such special story, the story of Joseph Bonder and Bronislaw Feruta, with you now. The Foundation's 2009 reunion documentary entitled Reunion 2009 Village on the Rock was awarded the 2010 Silver Telly Award in the History Biography category, their highest award. Thank you to the Jewish Foundation for the Righteous and its Executive Vice President, Stanley Stahl, for allowing us to do so tonight.
Ostra Mogila, that's a town. Why they call that Ostra Mogila, there's a big rock, could be 2-3 stories high. And there was 8 houses, or maybe 10, but 8 I remember. I found out after the war, every house had a Jew hiding out, in every house.
When you look at people, you look at stories, and that's what it's really about.
It's really good to keep the stories alive.
My grandpa kept our family together because he told the stories of his past, which made us realize how hard it was back then and how lucky you are to have family.
My name is Joe Bonder. I was born in 1928 in Varsovka, Poland, Galicia. In a little town, there was a few thousand people, and we were the only Jewish family. My father's name was Israel, my mother's name Pesha, and my sister's name Joan.
My mother, Joan, and her maiden name Bonder, was Joe Bonder's older sister.
And they survived because righteous Gentiles helped them. If it wasn't for kindness of other people, they would not have survived for sure.
How much courage it takes to be able to put your family at risk for these people you don't even know. To just stand up because you know it's wrong. I think that's an amazing decision to make.
My name is Bronislav Firuta. I was born October 8th in 1927, right here in Ostra Mogila. This is where the village of Ostra Mogila used to be. There were just 10 houses. Almost my whole family lived here. My parents, my older brother, my younger sister, and me. We had a good life. We had the forest, we had the farm, and the beehives. This was paradise. But Ostra Mogila was destroyed by the Soviets after the war. And that was the end of Ostra Mogila. Before the war, the Jews were always welcome, and the door was always open to them. There was a mutual cooperation. We helped each other. That's why they knew they could come to us when they were in danger.
Varsovka from Ostra Mogila must be about an hour horse and wagon to drive. We had a farm and a flour mill. The mill was working 24 hours a day. And the war started in 1939. So I was 11 years old. The Russian came in and they took away the mill right away and the land.
The communists' idea was that everybody had to work. So my mother needed to find a teaching job. There weren't any teaching jobs. But there was this little village called Ostra Mogila, way out in the forest, very isolated place that needed a teacher.
My sister volunteered to be a teacher, but she had to have a place where to stay, so my father and mother went down to that little town and they rented a room.
Joan was my teacher. She lived at my aunt's house. It didn't matter that Joan was Jewish. She was well liked. Joan's brother Joseph would come and visit her, and that's how we became friends. They were just like our family.
And that's how they found their rescuer. The Firuta family agreed to hide them once the Germans came in, and they hid my mother and her brother.
the Germans started persecuting the Jews.
When the German invaded, first of all, the Jews had to wear a white armband. And the white armband had to show off. You couldn't hide it. You could roll off the sleeve, you hide the armband. That was not allowed. You could have shot for that. In 1942, the German created a ghetto in Scarlet, and we had to go to the ghetto. There was no choices. When they give you an order, there's no choice to do what you want or you don't want it. You had to do it. So we went into the ghetto. We stayed in the ghetto a short time, and my father decided to send me and my sister out of the ghetto to somebody. And he said, you go to Ostra Mogila, to Firuta's house, and they're a big family. Somebody from the family going to take us. My father took me and my sister by the hand. They took us to the end of the ghetto. And said goodbye to me and my sister. My mother, she is hiding behind the building and crying. And that's the last time I saw my parents.
We had to hide them, we had to feed them, to protect them, to clothe them. Even though we barely had any clothing ourselves, we had to share. We first hid them at my aunt's house for a very short time, and then they came to our house.
We were staying in the barn, and Bronek's mother used to bring us food at night. Make believe she was carrying the food for the cow or for the chicken, and the bucket, there was a pot with some soup, potatoes. Wintertime, to keep herself warm, I used to lay down on a cow, first with my stomach, and then later on with my back. To sleep, there was straw. That's where we slept.
Everybody knew that for hiding a Jew, the consequence was a death sentence and burning the house and everything else. But yet, we could not obey the Germans because the Jews were people and we felt bad for them. They had to survive and not be killed by Hitler.
One day, the Ukrainian police came looking for them.
Then she came running to the barn, run, but the police is here. And we had to run away in the woods. We had no place to go.
Behind our houses, there was the forest, and hidden in the forest were 3 bunkers. Those were our Jewish friends who had escaped from the ghetto. We would bring them water and food.
So me and my sister found those people, and they took us in. But we kept in contact. They came to see Firuta's at least once a week.
At night, they would come to the village and we would give them something warm to eat and something to drink.
And we going out like that till the liberation.
Even today, we remember each other. We send each other letters and pictures. It is a huge memory, a huge bond for both of us. Those were good people. I am heartbroken that their parents were murdered.
From my family, only me and my sister survived. And nobody else, not the uncles, not my cousin, survived. They went the same time as my parents.
Dear friend Joseph, your parents are here, as well as all the Jews from the Scarlet region. All of them were killed by the Germans. You can see the mass grave. I knew that the Germans were persecuting the Jews and burning them alive. Your parents are here. They were good people. They deserve heaven, not hell, because they lived hell on earth. We will always remember them, and if not me, my children and my grandchildren will know what truly happened. I can't talk. just because I am so very sad and my heart hurts.
They were a Catholic family, and they took a chance to help the Jews. They didn't do that for money. They did it of the goodness of their heart.
It is written here that my parents and I are recognized as righteous among the nations. We have to count not only those who were saved, but also future generations.
Thank you for saving my dada's life, because if you didn't, then my dad wouldn't be here, and then I wouldn't be here.
Family is your past, your present, and your future. It's a continuity.
You gave all of us a life here, and that means more than words can ever say.
The last time I saw Bronislav, 1945.
Joseph, my brother, I never thought I would live to see this day, this wonderful day. We will always be one family.
Bronislav, you're my savior. There is not enough words for it to thank you.
No matter how many times I watch that movie, I am moved. At this time, it is my sincere honor and privilege to introduce to you our keynote speakers for the evening, the son and daughter-in-law of Joseph Bonder, Alan and Stephanie Bonder. I'll read your bio. Alan Bonder is the third son to Holocaust survivors Joseph and Joan Bonder. He grew up as a second-generation survivor in White Meadow Lake, New Jersey, where he watched his parents be involved in their synagogue, White Meadow Temple, Israel Bonds, and Hadassah. They were inspiring role models to Alan, and he aspired to live a life similar to theirs. His father, Joseph, built his own business in real estate and did all he could to provide for his family. To follow in his father's footsteps, Alan opened his own law practice over 22 years ago and has been a successful lawyer in Paterson, New Jersey, building a positive reputation in the community. The struggles and successes of his parents throughout their lives has been a beacon of light to Alan in the way he lives his life, dedicated to Gemilut Chasadim, helping others in any way he is able. Stephanie Bonder is the first of 3 daughters to her American-born parents. She is a 4th-generation American on her father's side, dating to the Horowitz Margaretan Matzah family that opened their first market on the Lower East Side in 1883. Stephanie's parents, David and Joan Zimmer, were always involved in the Jewish community through the Jewish Federation of Greater Metro West, Hadassah, the JCC, and Temple Beth Shalom, where David was president. Stephanie followed in their footsteps as a leader in the Jewish community, beginning with being president of Livingston USY, teaching for 17 years at Golda Ak Academy, a Solomon Schechter day school, being involved in her synagogue of Agudath Israel in Caldwell, and holding leadership positions in local, regional, and national Hadassah. The legacies of both Alan and Stephanie's parents guide her in focusing on Tikkun Olam. Stephanie and Alan have 2 daughters, Rebecca and Rachel, who are also involved in the Jewish community through Hillel, Muhlenberg Chabad, and Israel advocacy programs and events. It's my honor to call Stephanie and Alan to the podium.
Thank you, Esther, for inviting us to speak this evening. We feel so honored that you selected my father's story of survival to share at tonight's Yom HaShoah program. It definitely is a tough act to follow, that's for sure. My father passed away at the very beginning of COVID in 2020. That's why I have my wife here. In 2020. He would have been so proud to sit here, see his video and all these people watching. It really would make him very, very proud. His story of survival certainly proves that there are good people throughout the world willing to risk their lives to save others. My life and the lives of my children are only possible due to the goodness of the Feruda family and their selflessness in hiding and helping my father and his sister during the Holocaust, in spite of the risk they faced to their own lives. When I was young, my father didn't speak much about his experiences during the war. I think he figured that he did not want to burden his children with the stories, horrific stories that existed. And I, as a young son who loved my father like you could not believe, I looked up to him, and to me, he was a hero. I didn't want to ask him questions because I did not want to burden him with reliving those terrible times. But what sticks in my memory as a child was we used to gather clothing and we used to make packages every year to send to Poland. And we would do that with his sister. I remember going there for Thanksgiving. She lived in South Jersey, down in Cape May, New Jersey. And we would go down and we would bring all clothing that we had from my brothers, myself, my mother, and my father. So they would have all different sizes and different types. And we would fill these giant boxes. And my aunt, may she rest in peace, she sent these boxes to Poland and to the Feruda family. I really didn't know where these boxes were going, and I didn't know what it was all about. I just knew that they were collecting clothing for people in Poland that needed help. They then tried sending money at times, but unfortunately, money in an envelope going to Poland never made it to the Feruda family. So the money stopped being sent because it never made it to the right people, and that's why they started sending these packages. I knew that my father believed in helping others. I realize now that part of that feeling came from his experiences during the war. He experienced these people helping him just because they were good people. They risked their lives. They shared whatever little food that they had. They gave him shelter until it was just too dangerous for them to do any longer. There came a time where, when I first learned about the Ferudas, as the attorney for the family, my job was to read any and all mail that came to my dad's house. I would go visit him regularly during the week, and he would collect a pile of mail. Some of it were solicitations, some of it was junk. See, my father never went to school. The war started, he was 11 years old. He was taken out of school, and that was the end of his education. But he was smart, smarter than anyone I ever knew, smarter than I could ever be. He lived and learned through his experiences. He worked harder than anyone I ever knew, and he was successful for all his hard work. But one day when I was at his house, he asked me to look at this one particular envelope, and it came from Yad Vashem. And what happened was Bronislaw Feruta was seeking to become recognized by Yad Vashem as one of the righteous Gentiles. So I didn't know about Bronislaw Feruta. And I said, we had a form that we had to fill out and all sorts of questions. And I sat down and I said, Dad, tell me about Bronislaw and I'll write it down for you. We'll put it in paper and we'll mail it out. My father starts telling me that during the war, or actually prior to the war, when the Soviets came to his area, his sister had to drop out of school because the Soviets required that everybody work. And my aunt, my dad's sister, went to Ostra Megillah, as you saw in the video, and she became a teacher, a volunteer teacher, but she was working. My father, at the age of 11, was forced to clean the streets in a labor camp. That was his job. He told me some stories. He told me when he was cleaning the streets, there was a young little boy, his age, that would also clean the streets. He was the son of a shoemaker or of a tailor. I don't recall what it was. My father told me that he came from a family of wealth. They were very comfortable. Life was good when he was a child because they had everything that they wanted. They had a farm, they had cows, they had horses, they had a mill. His father was very generous and donated to the local synagogue. And he remembered those things and he told me those things. He told me how when his grandfather passed away, they donated a roof to the synagogue so that the synagogue would have a solid roof. And that when his grandmother passed away, who happened to live with them, they donated a floor, a wooden floor, where there was a dirt floor, to the women's section of the Orthodox synagogue as well. It was quite the stories that he had told me. When he was telling me about the Ferutas, he told me how they went to the ghetto, just like you saw here in the story. This was all told to me before the video was made. And he's telling me how the ghetto was made and that everybody was forced to go into the ghetto. And there were apartments filled to the brim with people. His parents and 3 or 4 families would fit in a tiny room. And his parents saw that it was not a good future to be and stay in that ghetto. And they were right, of course. So they sent him and his sister to Ostra Megillah, which was a long walk, and they had to sneak out of the ghetto, and they went to the Ferutas. And originally they went to Bronislaw's aunt because they had a whole family, those 10 houses, they were all related. But Bronislaw's aunt had a husband who unfortunately drank too much. And they were afraid that he would get drunk one night and it would be disclosed that they were hiding Jews. So they switched to go to Bronislaw's house. He's telling me the story of how they're in the house and that they're hiding. It wasn't just from the Nazis, it was also from the local police. The Ukrainian police wanted to catch my father and his sister because he knew that they had Jewish gold, we can say. Because what happened actually, when my father left the ghetto, his father gave him a satchel full of gold and jewelry to take with them, so if there was an opportunity or the necessity to buy themselves out of a problem, they would have something. There was this one chief of police that my father remembers, and he was telling me this story, how the chief of police would constantly be looking for them. One time, they were in the barn on the 2nd floor inside. During the day, they were not really free to roam around outside. And all of a sudden, the chief of police and another or 2 officers came. And they were upstairs. My father heard the commotion and heard this officer go straight to the barn and straight to go up the stairs. Clearly, somebody had mentioned that there were Jews there. My father saw the top of his head. It was just the police hat. He grabbed his sister by the arm, and they jumped from the 2nd-story window of the barn, landed in the field, and ran out into the woods. And that's they escaped, which was a miracle by itself. There was another time where he wasn't so lucky, and the chief of police did catch my father. They put him in a jail cell where he was, and he did not know what was going to happen to him. In the middle of the night, he hears somebody at the jail cell, and the door opens, and somebody unlocks the gate to the jail. My father figured out he goes. He left, he ran out. He knew it was the chief of police, and he knew what the chief of police wanted. He wanted to be paid off. He wanted to be paid for letting him go. My father then goes to his house where he was growing up, and he obtained, there were 3 families living in that house at the time. 3 families took over the house that they had to leave and when they went to the ghetto. And he went and he convinced those people to give him his father's suits. 2 suits he took to give to the chief of police, and he had a pocket watch that was made of gold, which he gave as well. This saved his life. He was allowed to live another day, basically, is what he said. So when he returns, the Ferrutas, and they knew as well, that it wasn't safe to stay there anymore. And the Ferrutas told my parents, told my father, and told his sister that in the woods, they know that there's Jewish partisans that are living there. And they went into the woods and they found these Jewish partisans who accepted them. It was about 30 of them. There's actually a book written, it's called Yussel's Bonded is what it's called. I don't know if it's in English, but I know it was written in Yiddish. And my father and his sister joined this group, and they stayed with them during the war until liberation. While in the woods, they scavenged for food. They would line up. He told me how they would line up in a line and spread themselves out. And they had 2 guns out of the 30 people. And they would put sticks on their shoulders as if they were carrying rifles. And that's how they would walk into town at night and try to get some eggs, get a chicken, get some vegetables. But this is how they survived from day to day. During the wintertime, they dug bunkers in the ground, and that's where they stayed in the winter. One day, he tells me that they're in the bunker, and the Germans are coming. He hears gunfire. Everybody rushes to get their items to run, to get away as fast as they can. My father tells me that people were sleeping, it was nighttime, and there was this one young girl who would always steal his shoes and use them for pillows in the bunker. And the reason that he would do that, because his shoes were more string and yarn than actually shoe. It was wrapped, and that's how he kept his shoes together. So they were soft, and she would take these shoes and use them as a pillow. Well, everybody ran, and my father couldn't find his shoes, so he grabbed whatever pair was around. He puts them on, and as he's getting his shoes on, he tells this one man who's older than he is, and he says, "Run, run, they're coming." And he tells me how this man sat there smoking a cigarette and wasn't moving. My father couldn't wait and couldn't convince him to go. My father ran out. It was in the wintertime. He runs out. He runs through the snow in Poland very deep. The shoes go up to his knees because there's no bottoms to the shoes that he grabs. He grabs these shoes and he runs. After some time, he returns, and they return to the bunker. And sure enough, this man that was smoking the cigarette that stayed behind was shot and killed by the Germans, unfortunately. I think there were only 2 people that didn't survive out of their entire group of partisans. He starts telling me how when the war ended, he knew that it was over because he could smell the difference of the gasoline coming from the German tanks versus the Russian tanks. And when the war was over, he told me how he lost so much weight. And then he stops for a second and he says, "Wait a minute." And here I am sitting on the edge of my seat on his couch in his living room. And he gets up and he walks away. And he comes back, goes to his bedroom, and he comes back with this belt. This is the very belt that he had. And he comes back and he says, "You see this belt?" He says, "This belt was given to me by Bronislav's sister," because he was trying to connect to me what Bronislaw and his family did. And he goes, "This is the belt that Bronislav's sister gave to me because my pants were so big on me after losing so much weight in the war that she gave me this belt." And I was shocked. I had never seen this belt before in my life. And I say, "Where do you keep this?" And he's like, "Right in my closet." And this is something that he brought back to the United States. You know, how somebody says they have nothing but the clothes on their back. My father had nothing but this belt. He brought it back because he could not forget what this family did for him. This belt signifies what the Ferrudas did for my father. It was amazing. After the war, I wrote down the story, submitted it, and of course they were recognized by Yad Vashem as righteous Gentiles. After the war, my father tried going back home to his house in Fashuska, but unfortunately, the families that were living there did not want to give up this beautiful house that they now had. They beat him almost to death. So not only did he almost die during the war, but he almost died going back to his house to claim what was his. He said, "There's an album. I have no pictures of my family, of my parents. There was an album in there that when you opened it, it played music. At least give me this album." And they told him that we buried it because we didn't want any proof that there were Jews living here before. And we buried the album. So he has nothing and had nothing. Him and his sister went to a city nearby. I think it was called Jamalov is where they went. And his sister, who was about 4 or 5 years older than him, she married almost immediately because the Jews that survived the war did not know how many were left. They know about the atrocities that took place, but they didn't know. So she got married very quickly, had a child, and soon thereafter, life was not good where they were, and they ended up going to a DP camp in Germany. My father carried his infant nephew from border to border. They had to get fake papers, and they traveled as Greeks, because as Jews, they would not be let in from one country to the next still at that time. And that's where he met my mother, at a DP camp in Heidenheim, Germany. My mother was also a Holocaust survivor. She was from Vilna, Lithuania. I had the privilege of going back to Vilna, Lithuania with my mother in 1989, the summer of 89. This was before the Russian wall came down. It was during that time. I went with 30 other survivors. And what we did is we went with my mom, who survived, with her parents, who also survived, and her younger sister, who survived. And we went and found some righteous Gentiles. It was the most amazing experience. We have pictures, and I share it with my children. It's hard to follow, obviously, that movie, but my father was the most incredible human being that I ever knew. Anybody that knew him felt his infectious, smiling personality. You saw him in the video, and I'm sure you might have even seen some of that yourself. I'm going to turn it over to my wife, Stephanie, who he loved dearly, and she loved him as well.
Thank you. Joe Bonder really was an incredible person. He was filled with goodness. And, Alan initially didn't really want to ask him a lot of questions about his experiences when he was a kid because he felt it was so painful. His mother had a terrible experience, but she was one of only 4 families who survived intact together from Vilna. The huge Jewish community in Vilna, there were only 4 families who survived together. His father lost his parents right away and was orphaned and only had his sister. So Alan always was worried that if he talked to him about it, it would be too painful. But he felt like having the ability of the Jewish Foundation for the Righteous make this reunion possible gave his dad a gift he never expected to have. I came into the Bonder family over 30 years ago, and Joe welcomed me immediately. In fact, he was calling me his daughter before Alan was even ready to get engaged to me. His heart was so big, and it was filled with love, and anybody who he met, he would just give so much joy to. This past Shabbat, I was in shul. It was also the last day of Pesach, and Yizkor was being recited. Ever since Alan's mother, Joan, also named Joan, passed away, I've stayed into services to say Yizkor for her. And now, since his dad passed, I always say it for Joe. And when I was reading through the Yizkor service, I came across this quote from Hannah Senesh, who was a Hungarian Jewish young woman who had escaped the Nazis, immigrated to Palestine, but then went back to Hungary to try to rescue Jews. She was captured and eventually executed, but her words remain. She wrote, "There are stars whose light reaches the earth only after they themselves have disintegrated. And there are individuals whose memory lights the world after they have passed from it. These lights shine even in the darkest night and illumine our path." Joe Bonder was one of those lights. His spirit was always the brightest in the room. When he and his friends, mostly other survivors, got together, they were always laughing and having a good time. They enjoyed the life they had built to the highest degree because most of them didn't think they would ever get that life. They knew their lives were a gift not to be taken for granted. He learned how to navigate all situations throughout his life. He escaped death so many times and lived to tell the tale. Once you were his friend, you were his lifelong friend. And since he lost all of his family, his friends became his family. And he would do anything to help his friends in their lives. Joe always wanted what was best for his kids. One day he admitted to me that he hoped he was doing a good job because he really didn't have a role model on how to be a good father because he lost his father when he was so young. He didn't have the experience to understand exactly what being a good dad meant. He knew that he made mistakes, but he hoped they would be forgiven since he only wanted the best for his 3 sons and their families. And he showed so much love to his grandchildren. Our daughters only felt love when they were with him, their Zeta. He loved them beyond words. He knew how to value life. And after meeting Bronislaw and learning the story, I feel he learned that from the Faruta family because they risked their very own lives to give him and his sister a life. And that is truly the greatest gift you can ever imagine. I feel very lucky to have married into the Bonder family. First of all, I have a wonderful husband who follows in the footsteps of his amazing father, and he gives his heart and soul to all his friends and all the people he loves. My family, as you heard, has been in the United States since 1883. I'm 4th generation American on my dad's side. We have different stories of survival, but learning about the firsthand experiences of Alan's parents, I've gained such an in-depth understanding of what happened to our people during the Holocaust. I'm a teacher, and throughout my career, I've taught in public school, I've taught in Jewish day school, I've taught in after-school Hebrew school. I always think one of the most important pieces of teaching about the Holocaust is teaching that there were righteous among the nations, helping Jews survive. I always share literature with the students, whether in Poland or France or Italy, Germany, Denmark, Lithuania. There were people willing to risk their own lives to help Jews survive, simply because it was the right thing to do. Since 2010, when this documentary of Joe's reunion was published, I have shared it with my schools, with my friends, with my synagogue, everyone in my community. It is just so important to keep telling this story and sharing these experiences. Although Joe is no longer with us, his legacy will always be part of our lives. And I personally wouldn't have my family if Bronislaw and his mother hadn't saved Joe. As it is said in the Talmud, He who saves a single life saves the entire world. I can only thank Bronislaw and his family for all they did. I can only thank the Jewish Foundation for the Righteous for reuniting them and bringing them together after so many years and rebuilding a familial connection that we continue to have with the children and nephews and grandchildren of Bronislaw and his family. And Bronislaw Faruta, I could say to him up in heaven now, thank you. You saved not only Joe Bonder, but you saved my family and gave me my life. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephanie and Alan, for sharing that incredible story with us. All of us here are truly honored to be here with you tonight. Thank you so much.
As the choir comes forward, I'll share that the poem that this music is set to was found written on the walls of a basement in Cologne, Germany. It had been written there by someone hiding from the Gestapo. It's one of the most poignant poems and an extraordinary testimony of faith under horrible circumstances. Michael Horvitz setting of Even When God Is Silent.
which literally means our brothers, but of course it means the entire brotherhood of humankind. And it's a prayer that God will lift all those who are currently enslaved, embattled, persecuted into a state of redemption, relief from their sorrows. And this is for everyone on earth, all persecuted people, and we think especially of folks in Ukraine right now.
At this point in the program, we light 9 yellow candles. 6 candles in memory of the 6 million Jews who perished simply because they were Jewish. 1 candle in memory of the millions of other souls who had their lives extinguished during the Holocaust. 1 candle in honor of the righteous Gentiles, and 1 candle to extend compassion and kindness to all those who are in need throughout the world. As we light these candles, we commit ourselves together to build on this earth a world that has no room for hatred and no place for violence. Together we pray for the strength to fulfill this vocation. At this point, I would like to call up Stanley Bergman to light a candle, Georgette Chinitz, and Seymour Tabak. Stanley, Georgette, and Seymour are all Holocaust survivors. At this time, I call Gladys Leibowitz and Joe Gradisky. I apologize if I mispronounced that. Caroline Seidner, Ronit Thor, and Raya Warner. They are all second-generation Holocaust survivors. I invite the Reverend Amun Sharon of the First Baptist Church in Metuchen and Alpha Ministries Incorporated in Metuchen to light a candle in memory of the millions of other souls who perished. I invite Alan and Stephanie Bonder to light a candle in honor of the righteous Gentiles. And I invite the Reverend Edmund W. Zelli from St. Luke's Episcopal Church in Metuchen and the Reverend Dr. Glory Thomas from the Oak Tree Presbyterian Church in Edison to light a candle to extend compassion and kindness to all those in need. Thank you.
Thank you so much, J.P. Stevens Chorus. It's just amazing every year. We really do have some wonderful schools in this community, don't we? In the greater community. Not only that, we have wonderful students too. First of all, thank you for coming here and sharing this story with us. It's one that none of us here will forget, and as we shouldn't. I was asked to sort of tie up this theme that we have tonight, and when I think of righteous Gentiles, coming from my Christian tradition, the name that springs to mind first is Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who many of you have heard of. Dietrich Bonhoeffer still continues to influence not just Christians around the world, but all those who seek righteousness, who seek to do the right thing, and who realize, as he did, that the lives of others are more important than our own. Bonhoeffer was a Lutheran pastor who, in his teen years, was tempered by World War I. His parents were not particularly religious, but he entered seminary, and he became a pastor and a lecturer. He was, when Hitler rose to power in 1933, he got on the radio and began to make a speech going up against the Nazis, and it was cut off before he could finish. The radio was cut off. He was then sort of marked at that point, and yet he continued to go back and forth between Germany, England, the United States. He was at Union Seminary. He spent time in Harlem at the church there and just loved the worship there. But he came back. He could not stay away because he knew he had to be there. And he fought throughout the 1930s and into the 1940s for righteousness, to save people. The words that one of the quotes that he had from his book, Life Together, is not only about what happened in Germany in 1930s and 40s, but listen to this and see if this doesn't really hit home. It's a simple quote. The person who loves their dream of community will destroy community. But the person who loves those around them will create community. I want to read that again. The person who loves their dream of community will destroy community. But the person who loves those around them will create community. That's the problem, isn't it? Too many people that have their own dream of community, their dream. But we live in a world together. We live in a world where we are to respect each other's dreams, and we are to respect each other's culture, to respect each other's right to live out the life, the God-given life that we all have. Bonhoeffer said the first service one owes to others in community involves listening to them. It's something that's been occurring tonight, big time. It's so wonderful to listen. He says, just as our love for God begins with listening to God's word, the beginning of love for others is learning to listen to them. God's love for us is shown by the fact that God not only gives God's word, but also lends us God's ear. We do God's work for our sisters and brothers when we learn to listen to them. Listening is essential, but it is not enough. We also need to speak. You may have heard the great Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, with whom Bonhoeffer was such an influence, say something similar to this. Bonhoeffer said this in the midst of the Holocaust: silence in the face of evil is itself evil. God will not hold us guiltless. Not to speak is to speak. Not to act is to act. In this day and age where there are so many who speak, we need to speak as well. We need to listen, because what they do is fear-driven. We cannot just do this. We need to listen, but then we also need to speak for what's right. And this is what Bonhoeffer said: we are not simply to bandage the wounds of victims beneath the wheels of injustice. We are to drive a spoke into the wheel itself. We are to drive a spoke into the wheel itself. We become numb to the injustices that are occurring around us, not just in Ukraine right now, where it is horrible, but in this country. I was listening today to a program, and anti-Semitic crime is up something like 167% in the last year or so, in 2021. That's unacceptable, needless to say. Well, why is it occurring? Because some feel they have now the right to do these things. And you know, it isn't just anti-Semitism. It's whenever people who are afraid, who are fear-driven, have an opportunity to take out their fear on others. Because the coronavirus came from China, they randomly beat up Asian people in the streets. Because 9/11 happened by Muslim terrorists, they take it out on Muslims or even someone they think looks like a Muslim. This is what we need to speak up against. This is what we need to never be able to tolerate. And this is what we, being here today, is such a wonderful symbol for our community as Mayor Joshi said, we really, if we can't do it, no one can. And we see ourselves, we see our churches, synagogues, mosques, temples, wherever we gather, as important living symbols of how we can truly live together in peace. What we need now are people who are brave enough to be righteous, who are brave enough to speak truth to power, who are brave enough to take on these forces that seek to divide us. The Jewish rabbi who Bonhoeffer and those of us of the Christian faith rely a lot on, named Yeshua, he's a Nazarene, you may have heard of him. He said this. He said, "Greater love has no one than that they lay down their life for their friend." In the story that we heard tonight, Bronislaw Faruta, he said, if we got caught, we knew what would happen. We would be killed. By God's grace, they weren't, but they were willing to die for their friends. They were willing to die for their friends. That's what our lives are about. Not all of us are going to be put in that situation, but we do need to ask ourselves this. If we were, would we be willing to risk ourselves for others? It's hard enough in this world even to stick up for someone who's being picked on when you're in school, right? Or someone at work. But when we're asked that ultimate question, would we? I look around here and I really think we would. I think we would. Let's hope that we never get in a situation where we have to, but if we do, let's make up our minds here and now from hearing these stories, from being inspired by this service, to say yes to our sisters and brothers, who are struggling needlessly because of the fear of others. Amen.
Before we recite the memorial prayer to the souls of all those for whom we've lit candles, we've thanked many people, but there's an additional person who's worked very hard behind the scenes that I think also should be thanked, and that's Bishop Nicholas Brown, who's done so much to help bring this together. I apologize somehow or other when I sent the Hebrew text to the printer, it somehow or other got printed in reverse order. So those of you who read Hebrew will have to read it as if it were English text. So please rise, turn to page 6 as I recite the memorial prayer after their souls, and then ask all of us to read it together in English. If it's difficult to stand, do feel comfortable remaining seated. El male rachamim shochen ba'am romim Hamtzei menucha nechona al kanfei hashchina B'malot kedoshim u'tohorim Gezor rakia mazhirim Et kol hayudim min na'ar ve'ad zaken Taf ונשים שנהרגו, שנשתחו, שנצרפו, שנקבו על קידוש השם. בידי המרצחים, הגרמנים, הנאצים ועוזריהם משאר העמים. לכן בעל רחמים, אז תראים בסתר כנפיך, לעולמים, ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמותיהם. אדוני הוא נחלתם בגן עדן, תהא מנוחתם ויעמדו v'gorolam laket hayamin v'nomar Amen. Merciful God, who dwells above, provide a sure rest upon the divine presence's wings amongst the holy and the pure, whose shining resembles the skies. All the souls, from young to old, babies and women who were murdered, slaughtered, burnt, and exterminated for the sanctification of the name by the German Nazi assassins and their helpers from the rest of the peoples. Therefore, the Master of Mercy will protect them forever from behind the hiding of his wings and will tie their souls with the rope of life. The everlasting is their heritage. The Garden of Eden shall be their resting room, and they shall rest peacefully upon their lying place. They will stand for their fate at the end of days, and let us all say, Amen.
So we gathered tonight, as we do every year, for sacred memory and to never forget what evil can do to human hearts and human souls. As we recite Kaddish, we are bowed in mourning for those who lost their lives in the Shoah. We are filled with awe for those who survived and lived blessed lives. We are profoundly grateful to those righteous Gentiles who risked their own lives to save lives. As we recite Kaddish, we imagine 6 million Jews and 5 million others, each one with a name of a unique and precious soul, men, women, and children who were just like you and me. They found joy in the same things that bring joy to each of us. They faced the same challenges that we face. They had hope for a better life and a better world. Each one was part of a family. Each one was part of the Jewish people. Each one was a human soul. Each one suffered. Each one was murdered. As we recite Kaddish, we recall this dark period in our history, knowing that through painful memory, we are compelled to transform our pain into dreams and hopes for a bright future for our people and for all people. As we recite Kaddish, we vow to never forget. We commit ourselves to build a world that has no tolerance for hatred and violence, a world resplendent with light of goodness and compassion. As we recite Kaddish, we recall our suffering at the hand of our oppressors, and we are compelled to work for an end to all oppression wherever it is allowed to emerge and fester. We must remember our past so that we can impact our future. We must emerge from the darkness to fulfill our God-given destiny to be a light to the nations, knowing that the human spirit is illuminated by the light of God. As we recite Kaddish, we recall not only the terror of their deaths, but also the splendor of their lives. And we pray that their memory will inspire us in their honor to seek holiness in our own lives and find the holiness in the lives of those around us. Page 7, we recite Kaddish together. Yitgadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah, be'amad ivra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala v'zman kariv v'imru, Amen. Yehei Shemei Rabbah mevarach le'alam alamei amaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yitalev v'yitalal Shemei d'Kudusha barichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, Da'amiran be'alma v'imru, amen. Yehi shalama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, huya aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. May the one who brings peace in the heavens above, where the 6 million, the 5 million now reside, cause his peace to descend on us, on all Israel, and on all the world, as we say together, amen. We remain standing for the national anthems of Israel, followed by the national anthem of the United States. Kol hod balevav penima nefesh Yehudi homiha ulefatei mizrach kadima ayin letzion Sophia ad lavna tikvatenu atikva machnot alpayim liatam chofshi be'artzenu Eretz Zion Yerushalayim Liotam Chofshi Be'artzenu Eretz Zion Yerushalayim. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight are the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the
Before we conclude, I just have a few thank yous. Thank you again to our co-sponsors this evening, the Metuchen Edison Area Interfaith Clergy Association, the Jewish Federation in the Heart of New Jersey, and the Jewish Foundation for the Righteous. Thank you to the Edison Police Department, the JCC Front Desk, and the JCC maintenance staff for all the help that they've given us tonight. And I would be remiss if I didn't give a huge thank you to my colleagues on the program committee for this evening's program. Reverend Chuck Koblenz, Rabbi Vicky Axe, Rabbi Eric Rossin, the Reverend Amun Sharon, Cantor Emily Simpkin, the Reverend Dr. Glory Thomas, the Reverend Edmund W. Zelli, and a special thank you to Bishop Nicholas Brown, who literally without him tonight would not have happened. The people who are watching at home, we are live streaming this through the JCC Facebook page, the association Facebook page, and Zoom. None of that would have been possible. So thank you so much, Bishop Brown. And thank you to all of you here and at home for joining us this evening for such a meaningful night. Thank you.